Good morning, church. Good to be with you. Happy Palm Sunday to you. We are just 1 week away from Easter, and we're going to be talking about Jesus. And it's been a long time coming. If you've been with us this year, we've been reading our Bibles together, and the Old Testament is long. Is that true? I mean, we've been at September. We're not quite through it yet. Our reading plans will get us to the New Testament May 5th. Circle that date in your calendar. But we're actually going to get a little bit of an early start from our teaching series. We're going to be in the New Testament starting now through Easter. We're going to be in the Gospels right after Easter. I've been really looking forward to this. And Easter's all about Jesus, and we've been waiting for Jesus. I mean, that's what the Old Testament is. It's waiting. And, I mean, if you've been reading with us in your Bibles, not only is the Old Testament long, it's kind of dark. I mean, it is not going well so far in the story. God has, he's gathered this people to himself, the Israelites. He's told them that they are as to a child to him, that he's going to be their God. He's going to protect them. And their job is to put his attributes on display for all of creation to see. That the world is going to see Israel, and through them, the world is going to understand who God is. And yet that is just not happening. Israel has rebelled against God. They've gone their own way. They're now under God's judgment because of that. They've been taken as captives into Babylon. They've come back. But even once they're back in Jerusalem, things just aren't the same. God's glory never refills the temple. And that's just how the Old Testament ends. You get to the end of the Old Testament, and I mean, there's nothing there. There's no hope. And I mean, I should rephrase. There's hope, but there's no expectation of anything that's been the fulfillment of it. I mean, every time we've thought that maybe someone is the answer, that person ends up being just as corrupt as everybody else. And so all we have in the Old Testament is hope. All we have is the longing for God to do what he says he's going to do, to send someone who would make it right. And there's this promise in the Old Testament given time and time again that God will send someone, that the story is not yet over, that a king will come who will reign on the throne again, who will usher in God's kingdom, who will restore things to the way that they are supposed to be. And this promise, it shows up time and time again in all different kinds of books, in all different kinds of ways. If you are reading through the Bible with us this year, we've been in the book of Ezekiel, and we just saw this promise in our reading this last week. This is Ezekiel chapter 34. I will establish over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will shepherd them. He will tend them himself and will be their shepherd. I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken. This prophecy, it's given a long, long time after David lived and died. This isn't about David the person. This is about somebody in the line of King David, a king, somebody who will reign like David reigned on the throne, who will shepherd the people, who will bring us back into this relationship of God being our Lord, our shepherd, and us being his people. This promise is there in the Old Testament, but you get to the end, and it's just no one knows when it will come, who it will be, what it will look like. We're waiting for this person to deliver us. 400 years go by after the Old Testament is finished being written, and there's no scriptures being written in that time. And then finally, we get to the New Testament, and Jesus is born into this waiting, into this longing and expectation. And the story for God's people, when Jesus is born, is basically the same it's always been. Some of the characters have changed, but the plot is the same. There are people who are oppressing God's people. In this case, it's the Romans now. They're in charge. God's people are servants to them. They don't get to control their own destiny. They kind of have a puppet government, but the government is in Caesar's pocket. Even the religious leaders of that day are in bed with Rome, and things are dark. Things are bleak yet again. And yet there's this expectation, this longing that one day the promised king will come. And then Jesus shows up. And as he teaches, as he ministers, as he heals, as he raises people from the dead, everybody's seeing him, and there's one question on people's mind, which is, who is this guy? Who is Jesus? This is our question this Easter. We're going to be asking this this whole next week and leading into Easter Sunday. Who is he? Is he the one? And everybody has different opinions on Jesus. You know, some think that he's a great teacher. Some think that he's a prophet. Some think that he's a crazy person. Some think that he's a threat. You know, some think that he's blaspheming, that he's lying about who he is. Everybody has this opinion, and this is kind of the ongoing conversation as you read through the gospel stories. Who is Jesus? What are we to think of him? It's the most important question you will ask in your entire life. It changes everything. Your answer to the question of who Jesus is will radically change your life. That was true then, and it's true now. And so that's what we're going to be asking this Easter. And as we get ready for Easter week, this is Palm Sunday. This is the day when we remember what's called Jesus' triumphal entry, when he enters into Jerusalem the week of Passover, the week before he is crucified and raised to life. And I'm going to read this story for us, and we're in Luke chapter 19. If you want to open your Bibles, we're going to be in Luke 19 this morning. And everything about Luke 19, this story of the triumphal entry, it is all about this question, who is Jesus? This whole thing is about the identity of Jesus. And so that's what we're going to sit in this morning. And in particular, it's a story about who people expect Jesus to be. So with that being said, let's read in Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 28. When he had said these things, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. And as he approached Bethphage and Bethany at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples and said, "Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it. And if anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' say this, 'The Lord needs it.'" So those who were sent left and found it just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" "The Lord needs it," they said. Then they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their clothes on the colt, they helped Jesus get on it. Now, I just told you that this passage is all about Jesus' identity. And my guess is you're saying, no, it's not. It's about Jesus' mode of transportation. It is not about Jesus' identity. But here's the thing. There's so much going on in this passage, we miss it. It's over our heads. This is why we've been reading the Old Testament, is so that more and more we might start to see some of what's going on here that the author wants us to see, that the scriptures are pointing to from the Old Testament, and yet this is a tough one. This is probably over our heads. I want to help you understand it. This is a weird passage, like this is the climax of the Gospels. Like, this is the pinnacle of the story, and then we get like 8 verses about getting a donkey. We're like, okay, like can we get to the crucifixion? Why are we talking about the donkey? It's not only is it weird, it's a little bit troubling to us if we're honest, right? It feels like we just read Jesus stealing a donkey. Did you think that? Hey, go to the village, you're going to find a donkey, no one's going to be around, and just untie it and take it, and everybody catches you, just tell them the Lord needs it. And just take it. Don't let them stop you. Just get, this is like first century Grand Theft Auto. It's like Grand Theft Donkey, And so this isn't a felony. This is a statement. This is a radical statement that Jesus is making about who he is, okay? And here's what I mean. It's Passover week. This is the week when everybody remembers God delivering God's people from Egypt. This is about deliverance, about God's power. There's all this expectation. Everybody's coming to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. So everybody's thinking about God's power, and they're wondering when they're going to be delivered. They're under occupation again. And so this is this moment where all of Israel is thinking about God delivering them. And in that moment, what Jesus does is he takes on all the symbolism that goes along with a new king being inaugurated on the throne. See, who has the power to requisition an animal, a donkey? The king. If the king says, I need your animal, you give it to the king willingly. This is what Jesus is telling his disciples. He's saying, you tell them the Lord needs this donkey. And the donkey is chosen very specifically. Not only are there Old Testament prophecies, like in the book of Zechariah, you probably read right over this, but there's a prophecy saying that the Messiah will come humble and lowly, riding on a donkey. So there's a specific prophecy about the promised king coming on a donkey, but it's not just that there was a prophecy about it. The donkey, riding a donkey into Jerusalem, is this image that goes with kings. See, when we read 1st and 2nd Kings, when we read the story of David and his son Solomon, in both those cases, when the two most famous kings in Israel's history, when they become king, what do? They ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. It is this symbolism of Israel's kings. Why a donkey? I mean, wouldn't you prefer a war horse, or a stallion? I mean, something a little bit more regal than a donkey? Well, it's a symbol of peace. See, you're not at war. It's a symbol of God having defeated his enemies. You can ride a donkey in because God has handed the kingdom to you. There's nobody to fight. That's what the donkey's all about. So Jesus, at this pinnacle moment for Israel, he has his followers get a donkey for him. He gets on the donkey, and now he's ready to ride into Jerusalem. It is a statement that Jesus is making. I am the king. I am the promised one, and this is the moment where I am going to go sit on the throne. And now, if you don't believe me that that's what it's about, then just take the disciples' word for it, because they get it. This is their response to Jesus getting on the donkey. As he was going along, they were spreading their clothes on the road. Now he came near the path down the Mount of Olives, and the whole crowd of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the miracles they had seen. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven. They get it. They see this is it. Like all our hopes, all our expectations that Jesus might be this promised king, like he now is telling us it's him, it's now, it's happening. And so they take their coats off, they're putting it on the ground for the donkey to walk on like you would do for a king, right? They're singing, they're shouting, they're quoting the Old Testament promises of God's peace coming, of the king being here. Like they are stoked. They get that this is what Jesus is doing. This is the moment. Even the people who don't like Jesus, they still get what he's doing. I mean, this is the Pharisees. They see what's going on. Some of the Pharisees from the crowd told him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples. Don't let them praise you like you're the Messiah, the king. That's blasphemy. Jesus, we know that you're just a homeless person who has some interesting things to say. Like, you can't let them praise you." And then Jesus responds, and this is amazing. I mean, he says, "I tell you, if they were to keep silent, the stones would cry out." And see, when we read that, and we're like, that's pretty cool. That's a nice statement. What we miss is that Jesus is quoting the Old Testament again. He's quoting the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2. And that this response to the Pharisees is an epic burn against the Pharisees. Like, it is an insult that would have stunned the people who heard it. And again, it's over our head, but here's what you have to understand. Habakkuk chapter 2, the book of Habakkuk is this prophecy against God's people, against Israel. Everything's going poorly. The leaders are corrupt. The religious people are corrupt. And it's this prophecy of judgment against God's people, and particularly the leaders. And what's going on is God saying, look, like, to the religious leaders of the day, saying, you're unjust, you're stealing from the poor, you're not shepherding my people, and maybe you think you're getting away with it, but I tell you that the stones will cry out against you. Like, even if no human being catches you, just know I know, and my creation will judge you. That's what Habakkuk is saying. And now Jesus, when the Pharisees tell him, like, hey, you're not the Messiah, you need to calm your people down, his response is, the stones will cry out. They know what he's doing. He's saying, just like Habakkuk was talking about corrupt leaders and religious people who weren't actually taking care of the people, that's what you're doing too. And the response is the same. The judgment will come. God's creation will speak up. And I mean, just imagine being the disciples hearing that. Like, Jesus is spitting fire. He's headed into Jerusalem. I mean, they are so pumped at this point. It's amazing. All their hopes, all their dreams, all their expectations of Jesus, it is finally happening. And part of it's because this is a great day for Jerusalem. I mean, this is a great day for Israel. Like, the Romans are going to get kicked out. No more taxes. I mean, finally a king, God's kingdom. I mean, like, this is a big day for the people. But it's also a fairly significant day for the disciples on a personal level. I mean, this is a big advancement in their career. You know, they've been walking around like homeless people for 3 years. You know, they've been just eating food that's been donated to them. It hasn't been particularly glamorous. They've gotten to see some cool things and travel a bit, which is nice, but like not a lot of prestige. But now, I mean, Jesus is going to be the king. He's going to sit on the throne in Jerusalem. And when Jesus does that, I mean, he's going to need some help. He's going to need some people to run things. He's going to need some officials. And who do you think Jesus is going to turn to? Well, obviously the disciples. I mean, they put in their time. They did it. They did the thing. And now they're going to get rewarded. They've been thinking about this for a long time. You know, the Gospel of Matthew tells us that right before this scene, this is chapter 20, this is what's going on. The mother of Zebedee's sons, that's James and John, approached Jesus with her sons. She knelt down to ask him for something. "What do you want?" he asked her. "Promise," she said to him, "that these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right and the other on your left, in your kingdom." What is she asking for? This is not about who gets to sit where at the dinner table. This is when you're king, when you're on the throne, let one of my sons be your right-hand man. Let one of my sons be your left-hand man. Let be number 2 and number 3 in the kingdom. Give them the seat of honor. That's what she's asking for. Just a quick tip for you, if you ever apply for a management position, don't send your mom, you know. It's just not a good look. And it doesn't go well here either. I mean, she does not get the answer she's looking for. Jesus says, you don't even know what you're asking. You don't even know what you're asking. And James and John are right there. I mean, they're present. They're just listening to their mom ask for this promotion. And Jesus says to James and John, like, you think you can drink the cup that I drink? Again, over their head. They're like, yeah, of course we can. Like the banquet cup full of the best wine at the king, the king's table. Yeah, we'll drink that cup. Jesus is like, no, the cup of suffering. Because I am going to be king, but it's not going to be what you think. And you aren't going to want to be at my left hand and my right hand when that happens. And this moment is coming. See, all the disciples, they're thrilled. They're excited. And the reason is because they think that Jesus is about to solve all of their problems and give them everything they want, right? The biggest problem of the day is the Romans. The biggest problem of the day is that they haven't had political power. They haven't had prestige. They haven't had wealth and admiration. They think Jesus is going to solve all of those problems and give them the deepest desires of their hearts. And so they're thrilled. And this is often what we want too. We want Jesus to be the one who solves our problems and gives us what we want. Let me ask you, what do you pray for most? When life group ends and it comes time to share prayer requests, what are the things that pop up most often? Is it not the problems we have and the things we want? And by the way, don't hear me wrong. It's an amazing thing that we serve a God who cares about us and our wants and our needs. That's true. He's our Father in heaven. He loves us. He delights in giving us good gifts. So it is okay. It's not only okay, it is a good thing to bring God your problems and to bring him your desires. Keep doing that. But if that's all we do, and often it is, it's health requests, it's a job thing, it's a hard relationship, I want Jesus to fix some things in my life. If that's all it is, though, then often what can happen is things can flip. We can forget that Jesus is the king who's coming to establish his kingdom. And he invites us to be a part of his kingdom. And sometimes we miss that, and we think that Jesus is coming, and he's going to become a part of our kingdom. Your kingdom, the one where you decide what good is and what's valuable and what's important and what needs to get done. And we think that Jesus comes into our kingdom, and he helps us just get it done. He helps us accomplish the things that we want. And that's exactly where the disciples are in this moment. They've written the script for Jesus. They know exactly what he should do and what his kingdom should look like and how it should be executed. And now they think Jesus is finally going to do it. He's going to come. He's going to solve their problems. He's going to give them what they want. And the problem is that that's just not who Jesus actually is. He is the king. And he is on his way to Jerusalem to take the throne. That is happening. But his kingdom does not look anything like what the disciples expect it to. And see, often when we take this approach, when we think that that's what Jesus is going to do, he ends up being a huge disappointment to us. And that's exactly what happens to the disciples. They're thrilled, they're singing, they're dancing, they're like the moment has come, and then the camera pans to Jesus, and this is what Jesus is doing. As he approached and saw the city, he wept for it, saying, "If you knew this day what would bring peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. For the days will come on you when your enemies will build a barricade around you, surround you, and hem you in on every side. They will crush you and your children among you to the ground, and they will not leave one stone on another in your midst, because you did not recognize the time when God visited you." What? I mean, they're singing, they're praising, they're on their way for Jesus to become king. Jesus is the opposite of that. He's looking at Jerusalem and he's weeping. And why is he weeping? Because as everybody around him is singing and dancing and praising him, he's recognizing that nobody actually understands who he is. Nobody gets it. Their hearts are actually hard. And actually, as he looks in Jerusalem, he recognizes that even as he goes to the cross and even as he's going to be resurrected to life, they still won't get it. They will still reject who he is. And eventually it will come to the point that the Romans will come in some 30 or 40 years and completely destroy the city. Not one stone will be left on top of another. And so Jesus is weeping when everybody else is celebrating. See, when we place our expectations on Jesus, he ends up disappointing us. He ends up not being the king that we want him to be. I mean, and this is some of the hardest moments in life, when your hopes and your dreams and your expectations turn out to not amount to anything. You know, we desperately want Jesus to give us our heart's desires. I mean, maybe it's you desperately want a good marriage, you know, and it's all you pray for and it's all you ask for, and yet you're still single. Or you get married, but it just ends up not being that good, you know, and you're like, Jesus, this is all I've ever wanted. This is all I've asked for. I beg you for this every day. You say you love me. You say you care for me. Why haven't you given this to me? Why aren't you giving me what I want? Maybe it's that. Maybe it's, you know, a new job. You know, you're dead end in your career and you've wanted out and you've done the training and you've gone to school and you apply left and right and just you never get a response. Or you get the interview and it goes to someone else and you're just like, Jesus, like this is all I've wanted from you for years. I've prayed, like my family's struggling. I need this job. And he just doesn't do it. Or it's that broken relationship in your life with your sister, with your mom, with your neighbor, whoever it is, and they drive you crazy and you just like you want to love them. You want to be Jesus to them, but you just are tearing your hair out. You're just praying, God, fix this. Show me, help them see, whatever. And it just gets worse and worse. Like, whatever it is for you, I know you've had that moment. The thing you want more than anything, you ask God for it. It's even a good thing. You're not asking to become millionaires or what. Like, it's a good thing, and you're asking God for it, and he doesn't do it. And I don't know why it is that sometimes Jesus gives us the things we ask for and sometimes he doesn't. I know that he says that he loves us. I know that he's good. He says that our Father in heaven is a good Father who loves us and delights in us and wants to give us good things. I know that's true. I don't know why sometimes the answer is no. But I do know that sometimes what we think we need in life and what we actually need are two different things. And sometimes our expectations of Jesus can blind us from actually seeing who he really is. See, Jesus in this moment, Passover, is about to do something so big, so grand, so amazing. Like it's beyond the wildest hopes and dreams of anybody in that day. I mean, he is about to defeat sin and death. He's about to restore all of creation to God. I mean, he is about to deal Satan a blow that will never be undone. I mean, he's about to start a movement that will take fire and spread across the globe. Like the reason we're here today is because of what Jesus is about to do. It's this incredible thing. And yet everyone misses it because he's not doing the little thing that they wanted. And that same thing can happen to us. When we write Jesus' script for him and he doesn't play his part, and rather than asking, rather than seeking, rather than letting Jesus speak and show us what he's doing, we have the idea in our head, and so we end up being blind to it. I wonder if that's going on in your life right now. See, sometimes we miss what the biggest problems in our life are, what the things that we actually need. You know, we like to focus on the things that are outside of us, the problems that are outside of us, and yet the biggest problems in our life are not outside of us, they're actually inside of us. And we don't like to pray about that. Let me ask you this. If I asked you this morning, what is the biggest problem in your life? What is the biggest thing going on for you? Whatever your answer is, my guess is the vast majority of us, myself included, would answer something outside of us. It's a relationship, it's a job, it's money, it's whatever. Whatever it is, it's probably important and a big deal. I'm not saying it's not a big deal, but I'm just saying it's something outside of us. Very few of us would say the biggest problem in my life right now is my own selfishness. It's my pride. It's my greed. It's my materialism. It's my lack of trust in God. That's the biggest problem that I need help with. We like to ignore those problems. We like to focus on the problems outside of us, and so that's what we pray for. That's what we ask for. And yet what Jesus comes to do is actually to fix us. He does not come to fix all of our problems. He comes to fix us. And that's what he's doing at Easter. That's what he's doing on the cross. He's coming to deal with sin. He's coming to restore us, to give us his Spirit, to make us a new creation. That's what he's up to. And yet sometimes we're like, I don't even want to think about that right now. I know I have issues. I'm not perfect, but I really need you to fix this. And that's just not what Jesus is doing. I'm a father, as many of you know. Hazel's 4 and Thatcher's 3, my 2 kids, and I was just thinking of this week as I was playing with them. They love to play with all kinds of things right now. A big deal right now, though, is trains. Anybody have this? This is the classic wooden train. Every kid has had these forever. I don't know, and the technology has not changed much since I was a kid. But so you can build your own track, and you put all these pieces together, and it makes a loop, and there's bridges and stuff, and then the trains all are magnetized, and you can take the train around the track. That's one of their favorite things right now. And so a lot of times when I'm at home, they'll grab the box, and they'll just dump it on the ground, all of it at once. That's how you play with things. And then they'll say, "Daddy, help me. Help me build a track." And I love playing with them, and so I'll come and I'll sit on the ground next to them, and they'll start playing with the toys. And they just do a terrible job, if I'm being honest. I mean, they just start putting any 2 pieces together. It doesn't matter what pieces they are, and it's just a track just off into nowhere. There's no way that thing is ever going to come back around and make a loop. And the pieces are upside down half the time. The track's not even upright, so there's just no hope at all of the train being on it. And they ask me for my help, And what they want is to create this track that's going to work, where the train's going to go around it, and they also, they want to be the ones who build it, and they want me to make that happen. But the problem is they don't actually want my help. Because whenever I say, actually, that piece doesn't go there, so can we take this and put it over here? They go, no. It goes here. They insist. And so I just, I'm saying, you do you, go. You build your track. But the thing is, they're not actually happy with that because it doesn't work. They want the train to go around. And so eventually what happens is they get frustrated enough that their track's not working, that they ask me again, "Help me." But this time they mean it. They're ready for me to come in and to show them how it should be done. And usually when I come in to help, the first thing I have to do is I have to start dismantling what they've built, their hopes, their ideas, their expectations. I have to undo it. And then together we can build a track. And it's still together. They get to do it. I'm giving them pieces. I'm showing it where it goes. And we make the loop. And then we can play with the trains. And everybody's happy eventually. It's a little idealized. Usually they're hitting each other and they're whatever. But, but it works. And I just feel like, how often is God doing that to us? We want life to work out. We want our hopes and our dreams fulfilled, and we want to control what that looks like. And we say, "God, help me," but we don't mean it. We mean, "God, do exactly what I want you to do." And it isn't until we can let go of that. It isn't until we can actually come with open hands to God, and we can say, "I know what I want, but God, I want what you want." And if that means giving up what I've been holding on to, that means your answer to me is no on the thing I've been praying for, then so be it. Your will be done, not mine. That finally we can actually receive from God what we really desire. That he would show us how he made us and what he made us for and what he's doing in our lives and in our relationships and our families and in our neighborhood and in our hopes and dreams. He aligns our will to his when we're finally ready to listen and to sit and to see him for who he is. That's what Easter is. It is God showing us who he is. And it's not what any of us would plan or expect. Jesus does sit on the throne, but he's lifted up on a cross. He's given a crown, but it's not a crown of gold, it's a crown of thorns. He dies in our place to give us life, to restore us to the kingdom. And that same unexpected king, Jesus, is at work today in your life and in mine. And often he's just as unexpected. And so this Easter, we're going to be asking that question. Who is he? Who is Jesus? And our hope and our dream is that God would show us in new ways the reality of who he is and what he's doing in our life. And so I hope that you'll come this Sunday and you'll be ready to ask that question. It starts on Good Friday, and we're going to be remembering together the cross, what Jesus accomplished for us. And we have 2 services. I hope you'll join us. And then on Sunday, we're going to be preaching all about Jesus, who he is, and what it means for us. And I think it's going to speak to you. I hope that you come. But I also would love for you to pray about who you might be able to invite this Easter, who God has brought into your life, who's asking that question. Someone who they don't know who Jesus is yet. They know that you're a Christian. They know that you go someplace called church. Maybe they have their own history of what church was or is, but God has sovereignly put you in their life to be the one who's a witness to the reality of Jesus. That's why you're there. That's why you're in your neighborhood. That's why you're at your job. That's why you're in that cubicle. Whatever it is, in your family. I mean, God has put you there to be the church for someone to, for the first time, understand who Jesus is. Who can you invite to come and hear that message? And it's not because being here is like how God works all the time, but it's about your relationship. See, Jesus uses the church to reveal himself to the world, and you're the church. And so when you would make that invitation, even if they don't come, it's a step. But if they do come and they hear a message, it isn't that I'm going to be the one who explains everything to them. They're going to leave with questions. You're going to be the one who can talk to them, who can get lunch after church, who can check back in, who can be there when they are in a crisis. Like, this is the work of the kingdom that God's given us. And so how can you be a part of it this Easter? I encourage you to invite somebody this Sunday, and we're going to see what God does. Who is Jesus? That's what we're talking about. I'm excited to do it with you. And right now we're going to pray and continue in worship this morning. Can I pray for you? Lord, I come humbly this morning because I know that I have expectations of you. I've written your scripts, and if I'm honest, I don't want to give it up. I've got some good ideas. But Lord, I ask that you would help all of us to not care about our version of the kingdom, our version of life, but to care about yours. To not put ourselves on the throne, to not put our needs and our wants first, but to be willing to be challenged, to be willing to have our stuff dismantled, to be willing to hear no, because it means that you have something different, something greater, something bigger for us, God, and we don't want to miss you. We don't want to miss that. We don't want to be the people who are so concerned with our stuff that we just are blind to the very things of God right in front of us. And so help us to see that, Lord. Help us to be faithful, to be courageous, to say yes when you call us. And more, God, shape us into a community that looks like Jesus, where people can encounter you when they're here. That's what we want. That's all is in his name. Amen.